Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast, where we chat to founders, creators, and self starters about how they started and where they are now. Today's guest is Mike Aylward, the founder of FantasyGo, a fantasy sports app that has incorporated cash prizes. Their launch is imminent, and so we had a very interesting conversation. We discussed things like how to hire creatively and trying to find funding in South Africa in particular, and resourceful ways to acquire users without spending any cash. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy the show. So, Mike, to get started, can you give us a bit of a rundown about what you do and what led you here?
Sure. Thanks, Bai. Thanks for having me on the show today. Obviously, I'm a tech entrepreneur focusing on partnerships, growth, and operations. Been living in Cape Town for the last few years, but originally from Durban, as you know. And then also, a huge fan of supporting other businesses, initiatives, and I guess, was super eager to have a chat with you. Really
Awesome.
excited to see where this journey goes with the podcast.
Thanks. Well, thanks. Thanks for joining me. So, before we go down the many different rabbit holes, can you explain what FantasyGo does?
Sure. We are a very unique startup in the South African ecosystem. We coin it daily fantasy sports. However, we are positioning ourselves, as the home of fantasy sports in the African continent. We haven't leveraged into any other territories as of yet, but we foresee in the coming months, and depending on how well we do with our launch now in August, hoping to obviously leverage other key African territories in Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, etc., etc. But essentially, we offer users a chance to engage with a variety of sports that we have on a weekly basis. That being, they enter daily or weekly contests, ultimately trying to win over bragging rights with their friends, but also, have a chance to win large cash prizes. I think that's our sort of unique selling point that we have from a FantasyGo standpoint. But, apart from that, we've also started establishing and developing other products that are going to live and breathe, underneath the larger group's umbrella. But I'm sure everyone listening or yourself, people have engaged with fantasy sports before. It's really, how a user creates a dream team that, take football, for example, for an EPL game week tournament, trying to create a dream team out of the players in that, out of all those particular teams, and then basically putting them, you have a fake budget, and you go head to head against, other sports fans, and essentially how those players play that you've sort of incorporated into your dream team, how they play, how they score goals, save goals, etc., or score assists, you get points allocated to that, and obviously that ranks you up in the leaderboard. So it's a really exciting space, a massive space across the globe, and we're quite unique in South Africa, being one of the only ones doing it the way we are doing. So we're really excited to see where this can go.
Awesome. And so you said your USP is the possibility of earning cash prizes. How does that sort of work?
Sure. So essentially, a user would, buy into a game week contest. And as I mentioned earlier, how they rank up in the leaderboard, we are paying them out, percentages of the total pool. But quite interestingly, we've shifted our mindset, and obviously we'll probably get to it later on in the podcast, but we are putting up guaranteed prize pools from our side. So ranging between 15 to 100,000 Rand each week, guaranteed we're going to be giving that away. So if we get 5 people to 100 people playing that, obviously we don't break even, but it's sort of a marketing ploy from our side to sort of generate that interest. And we believe that it's going to, hopefully see a lot of interest coming from users, individuals that are keen to, jump into fun, engaging games that we have at FantasyGo and to, earn some extra cash, have fun while doing it. And I'm sure you can agree, when you have some money down on a sporting event, it really sort of entices you to that game, and it just takes a whole sort of experience to the next level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, everyone sort of does it in the janky way at the beginning of Premier League season, where they put $100, $200 in the pot, and the top three get a share of that. So, I mean, everyone's doing it already, but it's great that you guys are sort of building that into the platform. So what
100%.
gave you the idea, and what gave you conviction that you knew it would work?
Yeah, interesting. My business partner, Luke, and I had played around with hundreds of ideas, crazy ideas, some really, really stupid, some really great, but the execution of them was quite difficult. And funny enough, we were sitting literally on our couch watching a Premier League game, and an ad popped up we had obviously been speaking about our fantasy team, and an ad popped up related to one of the betting sites. And we were like, shit, why don't we actually utilize like a betting element into FPL? There's so much interest in it. One, we add in that sort of instant gratification where users can win cash prizes or sponsored prizes on a weekly, daily basis, as opposed to waiting, a whole season, 38 game weeks, where, people fall off on the normal fantasy Premier League side. And, we wanted that instant gratification. So that's, where the idea stemmed from. Obviously, we did a lot of research in the coming sort of days that we sort of came up with the idea. And we found that there are obviously massive players in the US and in India, being DraftKings and Dream 11, that had been in the space, had taken daily fantasy sports, growing their audience from nothing to 50 million users in a short space of time of 3 years. And we were sort of blown away by the markets and how they had done. Obviously, that was a bit of a deterrent. We thought, geez, there's no point in us trying to develop that. But more research we did, we obviously understood that there was a gap in the market for South Africa and Africa, which is quite untapped, which was really, really exciting. So that was the start of the journey. Everyone loves sports back home here in SA. Rugby, football, cricket is massive. It's really the backbone of our society. Looking at the Rugby World Cup in 1995 and how that had a huge play from not only a social sort of, but political element within our country. And as we said, everyone loves throwing a couple of rands down on a game to make it that much more exciting.
Yeah, and it's like almost a different kind of sports betting where you're almost more in control of the outcome, because it's your
100%.
skills that determine how much you make, which to me seems a bit more interesting than trying to pick a winner out of two teams or who's going to score first and that type of betting. People love that type of betting, but it's more up to chance, when it's like if you're competing in a pool of people and your mates and you are the best at picking the best players, although it is chance on like how those guys are going to perform, you just feel like you're more involved in the process.
You're so right. I mean, we sorry to interrupt you there, but it's such an important point that you made. We still try and position ourselves away from regular sports betting. We're not a sports book at all. Yes, there's a cash element, but we position ourselves as a social gaming platform. But we also wanted to have a dig at the sports books in a way that, the house always wins. It always has. And we wanted to sort of level the playing field for users to go head to head against their friends or other like-minded sports fans. And it's all about the skill at the end of the day. Of course, there is chance with anything, but we are leading on that skill-based sort of framework.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you and your business partner, is it Luke?
Yeah.
You guys seemed very intentional about wanting to come up with like a business idea. Was that something you guys discussed, or was it just like it would be cool to start a business, or were you guys like, we have to start a business, let's just come up and throw ideas at the wall and see what sticks?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll speak from myself on behalf of myself here, but I think Luke is quite aligned with with my thoughts and the entrepreneurial journey that we've been along. I've come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I think that a really interesting thing after I was in the States for a year, gap year, having just finished varsity and then came back, and I literally couldn't get a job. It was probably about 6 months to 8 months that I just could not find work. And that wasn't the heart of me not trying or not going to interviews. You know, you get to the final interview and you wouldn't get the job. And I think there was a lot of sort of built up angst that, you know, I just thought, shit, I can't work for someone else. You know, I need to create something for myself so that I can actually be employed. And I think that's where it sort of stemmed from. But also I've got a high risk tolerance. I'm very creative, you know, always thinking of new ways to not only maybe create businesses, but also help businesses and other people, you know, around that. I think business plays a huge role in that, giving back. So yeah.
Yeah, like as they say, pressure builds diamonds. I've sort of experienced that similar sort of circumstances where you're like, oh shit, it might have to be me who creates this
100%.
opportunity. And then you end up just thinking about different ideas and the possibilities when before you were relying on other people to give you that chance, which is a definitely way better way of thinking. So before we move on, we did touch on like the whole betting and it not being a betting platform and that type of thing. I was just curious, a thought popped into my head. How does your guys' pricing work? Like, how does FantasyGo make money?
Yeah, good question. We take a percentage of the pool, and then there's also other sort of revenue streams that we built into the platform, whether that's advertising revenue or sort of partnership revenue. So we've got like a 4-prong approach to that, to building revenue for the business.
Awesome. And so how long have you guys been working on FantasyGo for?
Yeah, I think we founded the business in the heart of the first or second initial lockdown in South Africa. So that must have been about 2 years ago. I think that it was, as they all say, you know, through difficult sort of situations or times, you know, that is the best moment for new opportunity. And then you can look at it in the past with the massive unicorns that have been established, you know, through the financial crisis in 2008, 2007, around that period, you know, Uber coming about, Airbnb. So it was quite interesting how it all sort of fell into place. But obviously there's just so much leg room and dog work that needs to be done in order to even just get past that ideation phase. I mean, give you an example, myself and Luca, we're not technically sort of gifted with coding and development. So we had to find, you know, a CTO, someone to come lead the tech team. Interesting story, you know, we had no idea how to approach the situation, you know, where to go, who to speak to. So we thought the best way to do it was, you know, we can't hire someone who's already established in the workforce, just cost way too much money. We had no financing, we had no funding. So we sent out blast emails to all the major universities around South Africa and literally out of luck got into their email communication system, and it just blasted all their sort of development students. And yeah, we had probably about 10 to 20 people come back to us and they were really interested and interviewed them. And we eventually sort of brought Matt on, who's been an absolute beast. Without Matt, we wouldn't be, you know, where we are today. And it was just such an amazing sort of guerrilla tactic to try and bring in someone. And we're so fortunate that we got Matt, and, you know, that's where we are today. Yeah.
Shit, that's a great story. Very, very resourceful. I wouldn't have thought of that, but it's a great idea. Getting a young developer on board, and I'm assuming you gave him some equity and he's invested in the process, and
100%.
That's awesome. So I know this project has been in the pipeline for a while and you're working on it on the side because you had another job. So what struggles were you grappling with deciding whether to just go for it full time? Were there any struggles?
Yeah, so I mean, the four of us have only gone full time beginning of this year. So it was a year and a bit that we were working, other jobs. So we were all working for overseas startups. So, very sort of time consuming, from an individual standpoint, and quite stressful. But, these are the difficult decisions that you need to make. I think it was an easy one because it was our baby that we had been fostering for the last 2 years. But I think time's a struggle as well. We had 2 or 3 things going on at the same time. So, we couldn't put in 100% or 1,000% into FantasyGo, which was really disheartening, quite difficult for us. But fortunately now, we're all full time and built out an amazing team. Some other sort of struggles that we sort of faced, finances. We needed to support ourselves. We weren't living back home or didn't have that opportunity, so we needed to obviously have some sort of backing financially to help us through whilst we moved through the growth of FantasyGo. And then also, raising funds in SA was never easy. It's not as easy as I would say the US or Europe. A lot of bottlenecks. But yeah, those are some of the struggles that we faced. But I think at the end, making that final decision and going full time with FantasyGo was probably the easiest decision that I've ever had to make. Yeah.
Awesome. When it feels right, it just feels right.
Yep.
So you touched on something I'm quite interested, which is like time management and, like having a side project. How did you navigate that process? Were you working for all your spare hours on FantasyGo? Was it a weekend thing?
Yeah.
Like, did you feel burnt out doing it? Sorry, there's a few questions in there, but yeah, just intrigued how you managed that.
Yeah. I think time management's everything. They always say work smart, not hard. But in this instance, I think we had to really work smart and hard at the same time. Yeah, it was really difficult. I think, speaking for myself here, I was fortunate, obviously, working at a tech startup, doing sales and partnerships and operations for them. I was always at my computer, so I was able to converse with the guys. We were all doing the same thing. So, whilst we were doing our day jobs, we were also working on FantasyGo, which we were very fortunate about. What are some of your other questions?
Yeah, so, well, you basically addressed them. It was like multiple questions, like asking a similar thing, like how you manage your time. And so you worked on it during work hours.
And weekends.
Yeah, and weekends, you just went ham. And then one question that came to mind while you were speaking was, did you guys set deadlines for yourself so you could keep making progress?
Yeah, 100%. We had, initially in the early beginning of our MVP sort of stage, we would have multiple sprints a week. Weekends we would probably meet up and go over that. Obviously, early on, development of the product was huge, but after that, I think we, especially for myself, we had to sort of find distribution. We needed to acquire users, all without no funding. So we had to really think on our feet, guerrilla marketing, guerrilla growth. Yeah, so it was difficult, but very interesting and so worth it.
What type of guerrilla marketing tactics did you guys employ?
Yeah, good question. We obviously thought that without funding, we obviously put in our own sort of finances from the 4 of us to try and fund it, especially on social media. But of course, being in the space that we are, it was quite difficult to do any sort of paid media advertising without the necessary licenses. So that was a huge roadblock for us. We also sort of utilize on-the-ground activations, going to the football fives football courts, speaking to guys, and really just a word-of-mouth sort of marketing. From there, we also we thought about getting some PR out there. So we had a few amazing PR write-ups on Venture Burden, on News 24, Business Insider. And I think that really helped, leverage our name in the space. And to be honest, those weren't paid PR sessions. We had really had to sell them on the fact that this was a really unique product. that, people would love to sort of read about and would add to their sort of content wheel. And with that, it really caught the eye of a few big players. We were able to get onto Moya. I don't know if you've come across Moya. It's a super app, data-free super app for South Africans. I think they, at the time, had about 5 to 7 million South Africans on there. And we basically lived as a sort of micro app in the ecosystem, which opened up huge distribution channels for us. So when we did officially have that launch for the POC MVP, which we ran for about 3 months, I think we acquired about 80,000 unique users just from that time period. Yeah.
Shit.
Without
That's great.
spending any cash. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what has been the hardest part of your journey so far, would you say?
There's too many. Probably fundraising. I mean, it's never easy. I think, being told no 50 to 100 times is really difficult and disheartening, but you just got to keep on going. And then on the other side, probably legal was quite difficult. Obviously, being in the space, there were a lot of headaches, worries, but we've got over that bridge now. So I think those were the two main sort of the hardest parts of the journey so far.
Shit. And with legal, was it like external legal counsel where you build per hour and you're very conscious of those costs and that type of thing?
Exactly. We were lucky to get a sort of mentor in the space. He's probably the best gaming lawyer in Africa. Once again, we had to sell him on FantasyGo, on the vision, on the dream, and we still talk with him today. He's been amazing for us, and he really helped us through that sort of hurdle, especially in the early days.
Awesome. So I want to unpack taking that leap. You mentioned your risk tolerance, and I think some people really struggle with actually taking that leap. Do you have any suggestions or like mindset about how to take that leap? Do you do research and enough research on it to know whether to take that leap, or do you just fucking jump? Like, how did you go through that process?
Yeah, interesting question. Yeah, I think how you coined it at the end, just fucking jump, just do it. I think you need to be a certain type of person. You spoke about risk tolerance. I think most entrepreneurs are medium to high risk tolerance. I know that I have a really high risk tolerance. You need to be a go-getter. You need to be used to getting told 100 times that your product's shit and it's not going to work, and still believe in it, or be told 100 times that this is not a fundable project and still believe in it. This is all going to bog you down. But I think if you have a really tight-knit group around you, that also helps in, sort of getting confidence from each other and boosting confidence and morale. But I think one of my favorite sayings is, you stop, you die, basically. You just got to keep on moving, got to keep on going. And if you believe in that project that much, take the leap. Literally, that you have nothing to lose. And what, like you're doing and what I'm doing now, it's, we've got other projects on the go, but we make time to do things that, we love or we believe is going to have a benefit for us or our families or our friends or anyone around us, in the foreseeable future. So I think that's the best sort of advice I could give, is just take the leap if you really believe in it.
Yeah, and it is easier said than done. I know a lot of people have those mental blocks about taking that leap, but yeah, it does boil down to that. It's like just jump. If you have that gut feeling that it feels right for you, then just do it. So you mentioned also, yeah. Sorry, go for it.
Now I was going to say that talking about support structures, I think when you take that leap and you have a strong support structure around you, there will be a netting for you to fall. You're not going to fall and not be able to get up. And I think it's going to grow you and mold you into a way stronger person, and will teach you a lot of skills. Yeah,
exactly. It's sort of that risk cost benefit analysis type thing where the risks in your head seem way more hectic than they actually are. If you sit down and write down all the worst things that can happen if this idea fails, and those risks or outcomes aren't nearly as bad as they are in your head. And it's such a useful task to just write it all down on a piece of paper, and like, where would you end up? What is the bones of your ass to you? And usually, if you're lucky enough to have a good support structure and system in place, like, you won't be on the bones of your ass. There's support there. And I wanted to go a bit deeper into your support structure. I'm sure the team was all on board and had that belief, but what was your like family and friends perception of you going head on, like at the start of this year, just full time on this?
Yeah, I mean, interesting one. Obviously the family was really supportive. Being, my dad's an entrepreneur. My brother has a great job, but is also doing a side project. He's an entrepreneur. So they were, go and get it. Go and spread your wings and give this a shot. You've already built up 5 years experience in the sales and partnership space, working for overseas startups, companies. You can always leverage back onto that. So go try, give it your best shot, and take it from there. I think, my fiance was a bit more apprehensive. I had a really good job overseas, and was like, you taking a complete risk here, huge pay cut, but I think it's paying off, which has been amazing. Also, I think it's just a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I know it's a very cliche sort of saying, but you only sort of live once. And going back to risk averse or risk tolerance, I want to try and achieve and grow as much as I can in this one life that I have. So I think everyone, if you sort of believe in that and you're so sort of strong-minded to doing that and taking that leap, everyone around you is going to be supportive. I hope they should be. But
yeah, definitely. I can see where your fiance is coming from, and that I'm sure that does play on your mind and makes taking that leap a bit harder. But you're right, you do only live once, and you'll probably regret not taking these risks if you don't do it. So yeah, congrats to you for doing it. So
thanks, bro.
I want to talk a bit about hiring. Like, you mentioned how you got your dev on board.
Yep.
And I've seen you post a few more hiring posts on LinkedIn. I was curious about, like, what do you look for in an employee?
We're a young, dynamic team, so we want to sort of bring in young, hungry go-getters that can wear multiple hats. I think that's crucial in a startup ecosystem. Obviously, not drawing it out too far, but someone in operations can help with some marketing activities. Obviously, with the development side, it's a little bit different because they're quite specialized. But really, someone that's curious, inquisitive, that really enjoys solving problems, because we are faced with problems nearly every day, most weeks, and is really eager to learn more. I think you can really mold and guide youngsters into exceptional colleagues by just giving them the chance. Just like I never had the chance. I eventually did. After the 8 months, I eventually got my first job 5 years ago. But through that period, I just kept on saying, just give me a chance. Give me a chance. I'm eager, hungry to learn. So I think it's always stuck with me. I'm always, more so than people's credentials or what they've studied, it's more so about that person at the end of the day. And you can read a person and to see if they are, who they say they are, and if they need that chance. And we're willing to facilitate that and give them that chance.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Like, most people can learn anything these days. Yep. And so they've got to just be the right fit and be intelligent enough to want to get their hands dirty and learn. And if you have those two things, then I think you can get a loyal, good employee.
100%.
For the roles that are more outcome-based, like you touched on the devs and that type of thing, do you care much about their credentials, or do you just care that they can complete the necessary tasks and just deliver?
It's interesting. I think, with anything with development, it's about how much work they put into it. And I'm not saying in the current period that they're doing it, but beforehand. I think a lot of, and what I've just learned, and having spoken to Matt and other, devs out there and CTOs, is that they need first-hand experience, whether that's them playing around with their own projects, or if it's themselves, in internships or in other work experiences. They need that sort of hand-to-hand experience, and so crucial, I think. And yeah, don't cite me on this, but I think, from a university standpoint, in the development phases of studying, development, etc., computer science, I don't think they're given the necessary sort of framework that is benefiting the developers. You really need to go out and learn the different codes and learn the different languages, etc., and to really immerse yourself and try and build products. So I think, once again, goes back to being, being a curious sort of individual who is really interested in learning more and has developed their similar projects in the past, or taken a stab at it, once again, taking the leap to try and better their sort of experience and their background and their workings. Yeah, so I think that's a crucial point.
Yeah, that actually leads me on to my next question, because I feel like it's an interesting debate these days, and people's opinions are changing about the value of university. And these days, people can go to a boot camp and become a developer in 3 months, and you don't necessarily need that university education. So what's your stance on university education, particularly for hiring for like developers? Does that matter when you're vetting them?
Not necessarily. I think, going back to what I said, I've seen developers that have actually sort of left university or left school and are now insane developers, because that was their sort of gift, that was their knack in terms of what they love doing, being curious and experimenting and testing. So, no, I think university, there's always a place and time for university. It gives individuals solid foundation, but I don't think it's the be all and end all to hiring or being a successful individual. Yeah.
I find this an interesting thought, because I know nothing about developing. I've tried to learn a few languages once in a while, but I haven't gone deep into it. So I don't really know how long it should take for a skilled developer to complete a task. So, like, how do you manage that? If you don't know exactly how long it should take someone to complete the task. So if you hire someone that is actually less skilled or experienced as you expected, and they're delaying things because you aren't sure how to actually gauge that, if that makes sense.
It's really, really interesting. I mean, this is more a question for Matt, but I'll try and answer. I think that, when hiring, we also are quite strict on a development front of, doing tests, quite a few tests with the individual, with our tech stack, to see where their experience lies. But also, we need to be quite careful these days in terms of the occurrence of ChatGPT, which is not a bad thing, but it's helping individuals get that experience, or help write code at least, or the framework of code where they go and edit, etc. But yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, going back to when we hired Matt, we had no idea that he was going to be this amazing dev, this amazing CTO that would have carried us this far. And we and I don't think we knew anything else. We took Matt on. But for individuals now, thinking back, I actually wouldn't know. We'd need to take them through a test to see where they are, because you're so right. People are joining these boot camps, courses, and I don't know if 3 months is going to be enough. I think you would need to have that first-hand experience, and maybe it's different for varying companies. I think for us, being a unique platform that has been built from the ground up, and our tech stack and etc., we need to hire the best. And not to say the individuals that took the boot camp for the 3 months won't get there, but yeah, it's not the same as building a Wix website, for example. There's a lot of intricacies that goes into it. So we do, yeah,
Definitely.
I think businesses need to be quite careful when hiring.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and it's so useful that you found Matt, and now you have someone with the experience and know-how to hire the people and prove he can like gauge whether they can actually do what they say they can do. So
100%.
do you guys have a fully remote team, or do you have offices?
We've got offices in Kenilworth, but we do have team members that are across the country, and we've got a team of 10, soon to be 11 or 12. And then we have a freelancer in Nigeria, in Africa, that helps us. But we lead with a hybrid model. I think it's important these days, being very careful not to neglect the company culture. So we need to ensure that we keeping up with the company culture, but as well as giving the freedom to the individuals to, maybe work from home or coffee shops or wherever they feel like it. Yeah.
And what does a good company culture look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's everything, especially, with early new startups. It's a great way, I think, to attract talent, having a great company culture, but also retain good talent. But yeah, I think it's a really tough sort of balance between having that sort of element of a strong work ethic whilst also having fun. We're not here just to be ants and to work, and there needs to be a sort of fun environment to it, whether we're going for lunches on Fridays and having beers or whatever it is. And I think, we're still very new in this journey, and we've hired, the rest of the team apart from the founding team just this year, and we're still trying to learn. It's quite a difficult thing, but I think I'm very strong sort of headed in the fact that we need to build that company culture. It's really important. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear. I also believe in strong company culture can determine sort of the outcome of the business. Once
100%.
it starts growing, if you are successful, it can grow pretty quickly. And if you don't have that core culture structure in place, it can go in many different directions, and some that you don't want it to go in. And it's really hard to rein that back in after you've let Pandora out of a box. So now I want to move on to another aspect of the business that I'm very intrigued by, and that's funding. Have you guys received any funding? And if so, how did you go about getting it? I know you said South Africa is a slightly different beast.
Yeah. It's never easy. It's not a nice task. I think there's also this idea or ideology within the entrepreneur space that, fundraising is cool, it's good, it helps you scale, which it does, but also you're giving away a huge chunk of your business. That if you don't need to raise funds, then don't raise funds. Obviously, funds and having sort of your roadmap, your cash flow is crucial. Without cash flow, your business is going to die. But yeah, we're very lucky to have two angel investors, one from South Africa, one from the US, who joined us early on. They've exited the business due to our recent investment from Aylward Bets and Western Cape Racing. So we have been very lucky. It has been a very difficult, long slog, and these discussions when entering into funding take 6 months to a year sometimes. So it's not easy. A lot of back and forth, but we're very fortunate. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds great. So what's the hardest part about acquiring funding?
Being told no 100 times, but I think the SA market is, as mentioned, it's very, very difficult compared to the US and Europe, where a lot of startups come with a great idea without even having developed anything or MVP, and people are just throwing money at them, which is not always not the best thing. But yeah, I think our market is very difficult. I think we're trying to develop our VCs, which is amazing to see. There's a lot of startup boot camps, which is also great, not only giving some access to funding, but also helping founders develop their skills and hone in on execution, distribution, which is really important. But yeah, I think also, yeah, it's a long slog, if I can put it that way. It's not easy, especially with not having, if you didn't have a product already. I found that within the South African space, it's hard to sell. We're also in a very different market. Our fantasy sports market is quite difficult, and a lot of VCs, just don't have the expertise in terms of putting their money into a market that they don't understand, which is also quite difficult. Yeah.
That is interesting. Like you mentioned in the US, where they just sort of threw money at ideas, and they're sort of dealing with the repercussions of that at the moment, where companies' valuations are way lower. They're running out of runway with everything going on in the greater economy at the moment. So maybe it's a bit of a benefit that you guys have a working product and you needed one to get investment compared to just an idea. And
much easier sell at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. So what key things do you consider when negotiating funding?
I think what I first said was, I think there needs to be a trade-off. If you don't need to get the funds, then don't do it. I think I've always leveraged or, gone into these negotiations with the fact that there needs to be a trade-off. And that trade-off could be, yes, getting funds to help boost growth, marketing, hiring a team. But it can also be a trade-off with opening up doors, opening up new markets. And I think individuals or founders should really think hard and long about it, because that is quite a strategic way of doing it. So you're not just getting that cash and sitting on a whole bucket load of cash, and now what do you do with it? There needs to be sort of more strategy alignment there. And I think distribution is key in any business, and it's been key for us. And it's a huge fundamental point or ecosystem within our business. And I think, having that trade-off is crucial.
Yeah. So I feel like you guys have learned so much already, and you're just at the beginning of this thing with August and the launch around the corner. So what advice would you give to anyone who wanted to start their own thing?
I think, starting off is crucial. Having that idea. Ideas are really easy to come by, though. So I think, keep slogging away. If you hone in on that idea and you believe that it's going to be a success and there's going to be uptick, then, go for it. Take the leap. I think other aspects are, building out the right team around you is crucial for morale, but also for yourself to build that confidence. I think mingling with the right social groups, surround yourself with individuals that are like-minded. They always say, you are who you surround yourself with. So surround yourself with positive people, entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to, start this entrepreneurial journey, it really helps just networking. And also, I think, just believe in yourself, believe in your business, believe in your idea. And listen, I think something that we don't focus enough on is failure. I think people need to fail. I've launched 2 or 3 businesses before that have all failed, but I learned so much along the journey. And I think, don't be scared of failure. See it as a positive. So those are probably my advice.
That's great advice. The failure thing is so important. I mean, everyone's so afraid of it, but that's where you grow the most. That's where you learn the most. And it's like a muscle that you got to keep flexing and working on to get used to that failure and start changing your perspective to see it as a beneficial thing. That it's not all doom and gloom and it's a bad thing. There's so many benefits that come from it. So mentors are so important, and many successful people swear by them. Are there any mentors or teachers that look up to you who have helped you, guide you along your journey?
I think mentors are crucial. I think, once again, my family's been amazing. Father's a true businessman. being from a farming background, but he's also leveraged a few other businesses, which is amazing. And it's crucial for any individual. I think one breakthrough, apart from my father, also my brother and my mother also, played a huge part in it. One breakthrough individual that has, played a huge role in my business journey was a guy by the name of Renier Lombard. He initially gave me my first break. So, going back to the story of when I got my first job, I was lucky to get into the insurance space, but really being, basically, I was in the docks for insurance purposes, assessing damages. It wasn't the best job, though it got me grounded. It helped me for a year and a half, 2 years. But Renier really gave me a huge break in terms of the business, marketing, partnership, sales ecosystem or space. And I'll never forget, I was on LinkedIn and I reached out to someone who was an old Michael House old boy. And I just said, listen, I'm looking for a break. I need some help. I don't have any tech or sales or partnerships background or any marketing background. I just need a break. And he said, cool, I'll introduce you to the founder at Flance. And I'll never forget, Renier literally called me and we spoke for, must have been 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And he was so sort of focused, not only on he didn't even care about my CV. I said at the end, can I send you my CV? He said, no, I don't care. I get CVs and I tear them up. And he was so focused on the individual that I am. And he played a huge role in that journey where I entered Flance. Within 3 months, had already been promoted. I was going to hopefully sort of take over his position, and he was going to sort of play an overarching role, and I was going to head up all sales within 6 months. And that really gave me the confidence. And he's played a huge role in my life. And we still chat to this day. And unfortunately, I actually left Flance to go and work for an overseas startup. But just that story was amazing, and I'm forever grateful. So I think, mentors and helpers along your way are crucial for any journey.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I'm sure his approach probably influenced the way you hire now.
Yep, 100%.
So I usually end every conversation with a bit of a selfish question, just trying to improve, learn how I can get better at this process. And so what advice would you give me on how I can improve hosting the show?
How can you ask me that?
Any and all criticism is welcome. The harsher, the better.
Okay, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
That's a really difficult one, but I already love the episodes and the guys that you've been interviewing on the podcast. I think it's wonderful.
Thanks.
I'm a huge podcast fan, especially the entrepreneur focused one with Guy Raz. I don't know if you've come across it. How I Built This.
How I Built This is great. Yeah.
Although in saying that, like Guy Raz, there are so many podcasts out there, not only for business, but personal, for music, whatever it might be. And I think it's important to stand out amongst the rest. How you do that, I can't give you a definitive answer, but I think just thinking about Guy Raz, which has always stuck with me. His last question, similar to this, the last question of his podcast with all the entrepreneurs and founders that he's spoken to is really asking them, how would you attribute your success? Is it luck? Is it timing? Is it skill? What is it? And I think it catches a lot of the founders off guard, but it's such a true, honest sort of question, and they give true, honest responses, I think. So where I'm going with this, maybe that's something that you could find a niche topical question like Guy Raz has that you can utilize to stand out amongst the rest or create that sort of brand recognition as your podcast. That's just one of the ideas. But otherwise, I hopefully I can come back.
Great idea. Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great idea. So Thanks for chatting with me today, Mike. I really appreciate it. It was great learning about your journey and FantasyGo and just the ins and outs of what you guys are experiencing. I'm excited to follow your journey and play on the app and use it and see what happens. Just follow along. So if people want to learn more about you and FantasyGo, how can they do so?
Yeah, you can visit fantasygo.io. Obviously launching in August, but we have a really cool giveaway competition that we're running at the moment. So 15,000 Rand. All you have to do is register and refer friends for more entries into that. Otherwise, yeah, you can find us we'll find myself on LinkedIn. Otherwise, yeah, hopefully be in the news sometime soon.
I'm sure you will be. And I'll put all the links to that in the show notes. Thanks again, Mike. It was great seeing you. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned something. I know I did. So many creative ways to acquire users and just think outside the box. Such valuable lessons there. See you next week.